So welcome to tonight's Dharma talk. Tonight I'd like to give a Dharma talk called "The World is Burning with Greed, Ignorance and Hatred." And to understand this, I'm inviting you to look at the world in two distinct ways. One way is the world of our subjective experience, the world of our six senses: sight, sound, smell, touch, taste and mind. And in Buddhism, mind is considered as a sense. And the other way I'm inviting you to consider the world is this external relative world, of our consensual reality, the world in which we live, And both of these worlds are currently engulfed, well, for some of us, for most of us, are currently engulfed in the fires of the three poisons, poisons of the mind: greed, ignorance and hatred. And what I'd like to discuss tonight is how we can find ultimate peace with the inner world, with this internal reality of our six senses, as well as relative peace in the outer world of our consensual realities. So, most of the Buddhist teachings tend to focus on the internal world of the six senses. However, he emphasized that our consensual reality is heavily influenced by our mental constructions and our perceptions of it in ways that are driven by greed, ignorance and hatred. So when I say this, I'm not saying that the Buddha denied, or I'm even denying, the reality of our families, the world out there, families, our pets and our supermarkets and our banking and our life as we live it. The reality that there is craziness in the world right now. The reality is that there's war and there's social oppression and so on. It's not denying that. But I guess what I'm saying tonight, is that the Buddha taught us to work in the here and now with what we're experiencing, our direct experiencing. And in that way, we can wake up to ultimate freedom, the freedom of Nibbana. And it's from there, when we wake up to our inner subjective world, when we can work with our inner world, we can also work with the outer world. We work more effectively, actually. So in the Samyutta Nikaya, the Buddha speaks of the all. There's a sutta called the all, Samyutta Nikaya 3.5.27. And when he talks about the all, it's another word for the world. And he defines the all as the eye forms an eye consciousness, as ear sounds an ear consciousness. He goes through the whole six senses, including mind, mental experiences, and mind consciousness. So there's consciousness arises from the coming together of a sense door, like eye, and a sense object, like something to see, or form, and the coming together of that produces consciousness. And he talked about how the entirety of our experiential world is within these senses. Sometimes he's talked about the universe being found in the six senses. When you really think about that, or when you really contemplate that, the reality of this world as we know it, right now I ask you to say, what's real in your perceptions? What's real in your experiences? Like, what's really, really happening right now? And you'll say, well, I can feel, I can smell, I can see, and so on. And when we think about the world out there, I think about my home, and I've mentioned this on several discourses. when I think about the home, or I think about, the Gaza, or I think about other places outside this, even thinking about Lismore, when I think about that, I feel like it's real out there, but in fact it's just a concept in my mind. So it's a bit of a kind of mystery. I think it's a mystery. It's an amazing mystery that there, in knowing that, we cannot deny the reality of the world out there. Like I'm sitting here, I'm looking at Rosie, and I'm thinking, well, I'm seeing Rosie as my perception, my concepts of Rosie, but within Rosie there's a being, there's a perception of me, for example. So there's something real about another, something real about the other out there. And I think the way we ultimately resolve this is through compassion, to be honest. And that's kind of going down a bit of a diversion there on another talk. But so coming back to this experience of the six senses, the Buddha referred to this world as burning, the world of the senses as burning in a few sutras, and particularly the fire sermon. The fire sermon is a discourse of where, after the first discourse, the turning of the wheel of Dharma, he went on to find some ascetics that were fire worshippers. And it says there were thousands of them, or 1,000 of them, and they were all worshipping fire. And they had respect for supernormal powers, and the Buddha could match all their supernormal powers. I mean, he was impressing them. There's one sutta, it's not the sutta I'm referring to here, and the fire sermon, it's not in that sutta, but in an extended version of that encounter, the Buddha's doing all these magical tricks, and the chief of the fire ascetics are doing some tricks, and he one-ups them. He does a better one than them, and ultimately they have his respect, and then he teaches Dharma, and he talks within their language, like he talks within the language of fire. So what he said was, the world is burning, the I is burning, forms are burning, I consciousness is burning. And what are they burning with? Like when I say I consciousness, you go through all the senses. The ears are burning, and ear consciousness is burning. Smell is burning, and smell consciousness is burning. The mind and mind consciousness is burning. And what are they burning with? They are burning with the fires of, well, he talks about it, I'm saying greed, but he actually mentions the lust, the fire of hatred, and the fire of ignorance. So, in our internal world, greed manifests as the endless thirst or wanting for something. It's usually related to wanting something that's pleasant. We have a pleasant sensation, a pleasant feeling. We have a pleasant feeling tone when the sense doors meet something, like I'm looking at you guys and they're pleasant. It's pleasant to look at you, I have a pleasant feeling tone. And what often that stimulates is craving for more pleasant. I want to continue. So we have that. And we have that belief. We have that in the sense that we want the right car, the right partner, the right job, and we want to be happy. But that tendency for greed is insatiable. It's described like a thirst. In Pali it's called tanha. Tanha literally translates as thirst. It's unquenchable. It's unquenchable? Is that right? It's not unquenchable. It's unquenching. It's unquenching. It just, the more we want, the more we want. And it's insatiable. The more we get, the more we want. Hatred, on the other hand, arises from the craving to push away something. It's the rejection and the condemnation of something. And it's the desire, as I said just a moment ago, to push away or destroy what we dislike, what gives rise to unpleasant feelings. Like I could stand up in a moment and feel the pain in my foot because of having plantar fasciitis, and I could have some aversion, or I could have some equanimity. But if I have aversion, it's like this wanting to push away. There's a craving to push away. And delusion or ignorance is at the root of both of these cravings to push away, cravings to grasp after. It's at the root of greed and hatred, because what ignorance does, it makes us misperceive and misunderstand what we're experiencing. And some of the beliefs around this are we believe we are separate, permanent selves in a world of permanent objects. Just to say one type of deception or delusion. So that's what's happening internally. And externally, if we look at the world as it is right now, these three poisons are visible everywhere. We see the fires of greed in economic systems that prioritize profit over people and the environment. We see the fire of hatred in political polarization, systemic racism, oppression, and international conflict, war. We see, actually, I think war is strongly motivated by greed as well, and delusion. So it's kind of a big mix-up. And we see the fire of ignorance in the denial of our interconnectedness and the refusal to acknowledge the suffering of others. So, how can we find peace? How can we find inner peace, as well as relative peace within the world in which we live? How can we release the mental distortions driven by greed, ignorance, and hatred that not only cause our suffering, but also maintain it? How can we do this? Well, first of all, the Buddha highlighted that the path to the consensual outer world peace is via inner peace. It's like if we can resolve this dilemma, I guess. It's more like if we can resolve this greed, ignorance, and hatred with our own hearts, we're in a much better position to be able to do something about external peace. If we can just counter the greed with a generous heart, or the capacity to let go rather than clinging, and counter ignorance with wisdom, and counter hatred with kindness and compassion, and also the capacity to let go of our views, concepts, and craving, then we can find some peace. And some of the first steps are to turn our attention to the mental distortions and the dukkha that they create. The Buddha explained thousands of ways of overcoming the mental distortions. And all of those disciples who follow in his path, us Buddhist practitioners, also know of hundreds and thousands of ways of releasing the mental distortions. Essentially, it is about resolving greed, ignorance, and hatred. So, coming back to some of the first steps of doing this in many different ways are to turn our attention to mental distortions and the dukkha they create in a way that is compassionate, mindful, wise, and with inquiry, like a curiosity. What's going on here? You've often heard me talk about the 7 factors of awakening. I mean, that's a kind of a recipe for how we wake up, basically. The 7 factors of awakening: you've got mindfulness, curious inquiry, energy, joy or piety, sometimes it's described, but this joy, a kind of positive reinforcement for what we're doing, a joy in the practice, tranquility, samadhi or concentration, and equanimity. If we can turn our mind to experience with these powerful factors of awakening, we can begin to reduce the suffering. And often in this process, in the process of mindfulness, and this is explained in various approaches to mindfulness, if we can name it, it's really powerful. I know that when I taught mindfulness to a range of clinical populations as well as other populations, teachers and clinicians and so on, I would often recommend the simple tool of noting something, like naming an emotion for what it is, or naming a sensation for what it is. And like if you're brushing your teeth, just naming it, brushing the teeth, like it anchors you into mindfulness. The problem with that one is that sometimes we confuse the naming with the actual experience. But if we can name it, it's like we can hone in on and be honest with what's actually going on here. And we turn towards our dukkha, and we turn towards it in a way that's kind and following on intentions of compassion and so on. But we turn towards it in a way that we can understand it. And what we see is that, and if we're being honest and clarifying what we're seeing, what we see is that they are just processes. They're not me, I, or myself. We see their impermanence and emptiness as, and you've heard me say this many times, streams of dependently arising processes interacting. And I credit Lee Brasington for creating that little phrase. But that's what this experience is. This experience of life is not a solid single thing. There's no thing in all this. There's just streams of dependently arising processes interacting. So we see that the arising and changing of these experiences are because of causes and conditions, rather than an individual, rather than a person here. The person, there's no individual things to be found in all this. And when we're relating to others, when we're relating to an outer worldly event, like the news we hear on a daily basis it's increasing exponentially, the bizarreness of it and the terror of it. We have, like I said, we've got these wars and oppression and so on. If we can turn to our own rage, our own despair, our own grief, our feelings of helplessness and hopelessness of what's happening in the world, at least we may be in a better position to act from a place of compassion and understanding rather than reactivity driven by the mental distortions. And at a bigger scale, it may be relevant to have the courage to call out and name what we're seeing. And we name it at whatever level that is within our sphere of influences, at whatever level is appropriate within our power and our station in life to do so. And what we do is we call genocide as genocide, fascism as fascism, blatant greed as greed, social oppression as social oppression, and so on. So this world is rife with a whole range of problems at the moment, including climate change, wars, and so on. And it's really tricky to know what to do. And as a Buddhist, there's a tendency for me to just focus on my own processes and kind of remain silent. But I did read a paper early last year actually, and it was a paper written to Buddhist meditation teachers about how they're remaining silent in the face of the atrocities occurring in Gaza. And it was a bit of an analysis of that, and it was a bit of a call to action, because it's like the old-fashioned bully in the playground, you know, and bullies in the playground. And we're encouraged these days to deal with bullies in a way of calling them out, standing up to them, not falling victim for their coercion and their bullying nature. And it's like seeing someone in the playground being bullied and standing by and watching it all. It's like not saying anything about bullying behaviour. And if we do that, it's like we're reinforcing that bullying behaviour. We're colluding with it in many respects. So to actually speak out and call it out could be considered as right speech, number one. It could also be considered as the ethical thing to do, because in being silent could be considered as unethical. So I listened to a wonderful interview with a Palestinian peace activist and Buddhist practitioner called Mohsen Madami a few weeks back. It was fantastic. And if you really want it, I've got the link to it. I've got the YouTube link. It was an interview with Gil Fronsdale. It was fantastic. We went for about an hour and a bit, I think, or maybe an hour and a half. I can't remember now. But it was just so inspiring to hear. And he's only young. He's only 35 years old. But in it, the true enemies are not human beings, but rather systems of fear, segregation, and ignorance. And a central point in the interview was the radical practice of empathizing with both the oppressed and the oppressor. Madami clarified that empathy is not just justification for harm. Instead, it is a tool to understand the root causes of conflict and break free from the cycle of dehumanization. When he talked a lot about talking to people as people, talking to individuals, and not working on this kind of conditioning, desensitizing, dehumanizing systems. Because when you talk to people, you see that people are humans. Like we start to have some connection with them. We can start to see their perspective. And if we can talk to people free from our distorted wrong views, for example, our views about I'm right and they're wrong, it's possible to actually see into them and see their humanness. So he was emphasizing this. So there was this, in the interview, he pleaded for Buddhist teachers and practitioners to engage more deeply with social justice issues. He argued that if the goal of Buddhism is to alleviate suffering, then teachers must help students navigate worldly injustice through the lens of Dharma. And his final messages were these, which are really wonderful. Act with love. Use space and meditation to transform negative tension into positive energy before engaging with the world. He said, stay positive. And this is really important. It's so easy for us to feel depressed and powerless and hopeless. And he said, avoid despair. Because this, and I've seen this in myself, it just pulls you into a kind of depressive descending cycle, a spiral. And if we can maintain positivism, and I've talked about maintaining happiness, like a sense of, I'm using this term and it's a very Mahayana term, innate goodness. Remembering our innate goodness. It's a nice term to use, but Theravadins would say there's no such thing as permanent, lasting innate goodness. But there is something, I believe, it's if we are able to see the good in ourselves and the good in others. In other words, if we're able to have loving kindness, it's a way of us realizing a happiness that transcends all the depressing things that are happening in the world. And we have a duty to maintain that happiness, to have that happiness, to have that joy. Because if we fall into this dark pessimism, it kind of allows the harmful forces to fester and continue. And the last message he said was, raise your voice. Share the truth in a loving way to encourage others who may be afraid to speak out for humanity. Fantastic. It was just so fascinating. Fantastic. And so in conclusion, the world is indeed burning, but we are not helpless. By turning our attention towards our six senses, we can begin to cool the fires of greed, hatred, and ignorance. As we find internal peace, we are naturally becoming a cooling presence in the external world. We move from a state of reactive burning to a state of positive, responsive peace, contributing to the world that is defined not by its flames, by its capacity for wisdom and compassion. So thanks very much for your attention. And may we all find both inner peace and the world find relative peace. Thank you.